Hey, hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to the Future Land Use Workshop, part of Bath's Comprehensive Plan. I am Rod Melanson, the Sustainability Director.
I'm Jen Curtis, I'm the Director of Planning.
We welcome you tonight. Tonight you will be introduced to North Star Planning. They were here the last time, about a month ago, a little over a month ago, we did the Vision and Values Workshop. So for this evening, you're going to see what's been done thus far from all of the surveying we've been doing in the planning effort, and where we're going to be going in the next steps of the comprehensive plan. And I'll end it there and hand it off to North Star. I was going to do a long thing about how long we've been taking on this plan and who's involved. But we won't bore you with those details. We'll just get right into the evening. So we've got about 5:30 to 7:30 to accomplish a short presentation and then interactive workshop around the room and stations that will be explained in a little bit.
Great. Thank you. So I'm Ben Smith, principal at North Star Planning.
I'm Kate Birch, a planner at North Star.
And there's one more.
I'm Logan Capone, North Star Planning.
And we've been working with the city for several months on the comprehensive plan update. And I will turn it over to Kate momentarily, but this is our agenda for this evening. And we want to talk a little bit about high level, what is a comprehensive plan and why is it important to do? And Kate's going to spend some more time talking about what we've heard, what we've learned, and we'll transition into the main part of the program is really more about how do we translate the vision and values to a land use exercise, a future land use map. So the comprehensive plan is a guiding document. It's a plan that looks out over 10 or 15 years, provides guidance on policies and priorities. And as I said, we've been working with the city for several months now. One of the main components of the planning process is the inventory chapters. Those are existing conditions that deal with a number of topics like transportation, housing, natural resources, and several others. And the city's been working in various committees to do that work over a period of time. And our work has been more focused on the looking ahead part. So thinking about what will guide the policies that are going to be coming out of this planning process. So we were here in this room 6 weeks ago or so talking about vision, talking about what kind of community should Bath be in the future, talking about what are the core values that will guide the planning process going forward. And tonight, we're here to talk about another pretty critical part of the plan process is the future land use plan. So among many other things the comprehensive plan does, it is a plan for land use. It provides guidance on types of development, where those should be, the intensity of development, and a guide for future zoning updates. So that's the part of the work we're going to be talking about a little later tonight. But tonight, right now, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've heard and what we've learned over the last few months.
Great, so to start off, we wanted to share some of the big ideas we heard from the vision and values process. So that would be what we heard coming out of the workshop 6 weeks ago, as well as we had an online survey up asking the same questions. So these are kind of some of our big ideas for the future of Bath. Bath should be a destination city with an active downtown, but at the same time, it's important to improve and maintain that small community feel, livability, and economic diversity that people really value. And kind of a key part of all this is preserving and enhancing the things that really define the city's character. So historic architecture, Bath's open spaces and natural areas, and of course the waterfront. And part of how we can preserve and enhance that character, a big part of that is going to be about rehabilitating and using the vacant spaces and properties in disrepair that already exist around the city. In terms of economic development, we want to make sure we support long-time industries, small businesses, and existing tourism, as well as encouraging development by supporting new small businesses, new creative industries, and new year-round office and professional jobs. And tying all this together, we see people really want to improve citywide and regional transit connections, as well as bicycle and pedestrian access. So that means making sure all different parts of the city are connected to each other, as well as regional connections to places like Brunswick, Augusta, Portland. So now I'm going to show some highlights from those inventory chapters Ben mentioned. So kind of going through some of the data that we've seen on Bath and how it's changed over the past 10 years. So Bath's population has been slowly declining since the 1980s, and the state has predicted that it will continue to slowly decline. However, in 2021, the population popped up a little bit by a few hundred people, and it's too soon to tell if that was sort of a pandemic era aberration or if that will be a trend, that it will stabilize a bit.
Can you define slowly declining?
I think in the 80s it was a little over 10,000, and now we're down to just over 8,000. So a gradual decline. The median age has been getting older over the past few decades, but Bath is still younger on average than Saginaw County and the state of Maine. And Bath's median income is also lower than the county and the state. The majority of Bath's housing was built before 1950. That's a big part of the city's character, the historic architecture. And another thing that sets Bath apart is that there are more renters than surrounding areas. And Bath, like everywhere else in the state, has seen affordability issues. There has been a 135% increase in the median home price over the last 10 years. And 56% of renters are currently defined as cost burdened by how the census defines rent burden. And when we look at housing affordability in Bath, the median house price is lower than the surrounding county and then the state, but the affordability index, which shows how many people earning median income can afford that median house price, is worse in Bath. So Bath is having a bigger affordability issue than the surrounding county and the state. In terms of Bath's economy, one of the things that makes Bath so unique is how many people are commuting in here to work every day. Now, this number of about 8,000 people is from 2019, which is the last census data available, but in that area, you basically have the equivalent of Bath's population commuting here to work every day, which is a very large economic base. Bath has also seen a large work from home increase in the past 10 years, as we all know. But Bath actually has seen less of an increase in that than some other places in Maine, where people are, say, moving to their summer homes and working remotely all the time. The jump in Bath has not been as high. Yeah.
Question, 8,000 people commute to work in Bath, is that because of one employer?
Largely.
Yeah.
I don't have an exact breakdown.
Is it like 98%?
The census doesn't break it down that way, so we'd have to sort of combine some different, but yeah. And then I guess sort of almost in opposition to one very large employer, the other thing that makes Bath's economy so unique and that people are really passionate about is the strong base of small businesses downtown. Natural resources. Bath has about 15% of the total city's land is either in conservation easements or taxation programs, which is actually pretty high, especially for a small city. And in addition to those formally conserved areas of land, Bath has, in North and South Bath, a lot of large blocks of undeveloped land that are contributing to the sort of habitat preservation, natural resources. Much of Bath's downtown is a flood hazard area and is at risk from sea level rise. And the city is actually working on a vulnerability study about that right now. So a lot about the sort of process around climate resilience and sea level rise downtown is sort of being covered in more granular detail by that study than what we're working on with the comprehensive plan.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
And what is the current use taxation program?
That is where, you want to explain it?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a program that property owners enroll in to have a tax. The local taxes are at the current use. So if it's a woodlot or a farm or open space, you can be taxed on that land as its current use, as opposed to the highest and best use, which is the standard way that assessors value property. So essentially it provides owners of farmland, woodlots, and open space a lower tax than they would otherwise pay.
People are probably familiar with the tree growth program.
Tree growth is one of those programs. That's right. It's broken down in the inventory chapter as far as the number of acres that are in tree growth, farmland, or open space. But tree growth is a good one, good example.
What does highest and best use mean?
Typically,
Montero.
it's how many houses could you put on that property.
That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the questions
I don't.
so we can hear them over here?
Sure thing. Did you?
Yeah.
So that was about current use tax program.
Okay, so transportation. So when we did our first initial survey, about 90% of people use driving alone as their primary way to get around Bath. And though that seems like a high number, that's actually low compared to the numbers we usually hear for how much people drive alone. And when you look at Bath's commute distribution, 66% of people are driving alone to commute to work, and 11% are walking, which, again, for Maine, that's actually a lot of people walking to work. So we know that there is sort of a good base of people who are already using Bath's walkability as part of their daily lives. But at the same time, like we said before, there is a need to improve that connectivity for different neighborhoods from north and south to get to downtown, to get to schools, and to get to more regional amenities.
You have a question?
Yeah.
This is sort of several slides late, but if there are 8,000 people coming into the city every day to work, how many Bath residents are going out of the city?
I think it's around 2,500. And then about 1,200, 1,500 people live and work in Bath. Yeah, so that is sort of our overview of what we've learned, of what we heard in the survey. And those things are kind of informing the way we move forward with asking questions about future land use planning. So I'm going to let Ben explain some more about future land use.
Sure. So a key component of the comprehensive plan is the future land use map and the future land use plan. And those are detailed in state statute as growth areas and rural areas and transition areas. Growth areas are the places that should be taking the majority of the city's new growth, new development. Rural areas are defined as the places to protect from the impacts of growth and development. We often talk in the office about, the growth areas are the places that you're going to see in the future. Those are the places that are going to change. There's going to be more energy, more activity, higher levels of change than you would see in a rural area. So if you think of it from the standpoint of, if you were to leave the city and come back 15 or 20 years from now, in the rural areas, the places that you're protecting from the impacts of growth and change, they should be very recognizable. There should be places that seem very familiar to you in the future if it's designated in a rural area. And if it's in a growth area, those are going to be the places where new private investment, new public investment, and more activity is focused, so that those will be the places in the future that you might see more people, you might see more activity on nights and weekends than you see now, you might see more people on the sidewalks. So the final category is there's growth, there's rural, and then there's transitional. Those are the places that the state statute defines as really the kind of in-between areas. They're not really places you're incentivizing or encouraging growth, but you're not really prioritizing those areas to protect or shield from the impacts of growth and change. So we often think of those as kind of the status quo. What are the places that are okay to keep going on the track that they're going without any special protections from growth or any incentives or places to encourage growth or activity?
Can you point out Route 1 and North Street and a few things so we can tell where we
Yes.
are there?
Yes.
Okay.
It might be easier, yeah.
Oh, I have the laser.
Yes.
So this is Route 1.
And where's the river?
This is the, sorry, the contrast on here is not great. So this is the river.
Okay.
So Thornhead is up here. Yeah, this is the creek.
Should be pointed out that this is directly from the 2009.
Yes, so this map here is from Bath's 2009 future land use plan. And the thing to note is that Bath, kind of the geography of the city, as well as the extent of infrastructure, public water and sewer, kind of is what's defining this blue growth area. It's where there's public infrastructure, and it's kind of bordered by the creek on here and some other geographic boundaries on the south end.
Yep.
Thank you.
So in other words, now that we've had a little orientation, all of the blue and green areas are within the municipal boundaries. The blue area and the green area together they're Bath. The river's on this side, West Bath is on this side. And in the 2009 plan, the growth area, as Kate mentioned, is in blue, and the rural area is in green. And for Bath, there's a rural area in the north end of the city, there's a rural area down here, and the rest of the area, which is largely served by sewer and water, and is probably going to be pretty recognizable as a place where a lot of the houses and businesses are today, is the growth area. So one of the things that we heard when we asked some questions about this in the online survey was that those areas where there is growth, where there is development today, are still the most appropriate places for growth in the future. People did not generally support a lot of new development in these areas that are shaded in the green. Those should be protected from the impacts of growth and change, and new development should be directed away from those areas to the blue parts of town. So the idea here is, based on that feedback, let's have a future land use workshop where we're not necessarily talking about, where is the right place to draw the line between growth and rural areas, but for the rest of the evening, we want to talk more about within each of these areas. Let's have a little more detailed conversation about the types of uses, the types of things that people do, what it looks like and what it will feel like in the future, so that when we come to the next steps in this process, drafting the plan, updating zoning, that we're drawing a really good picture for the people who are going to be carrying that work forward, that they can build on. So that, I think, brings us to the next part of this evening's activities. Yes?
If you go back to the previous slide there, when you get to the north part of Bath, not North Bath, but the north part of that line between the blue and green as it goes up there, is that right along High Street, or is that off of High Street, or?
I think it is on High Street, yes. And I think that's so there's conservation land in here and the landfill in that green area.
There's also the mobile home overlay in that same district.
So any other questions about this map?
Yeah, before you talk about where growth should be, what have you learned about what the future demand is, especially for additional housing?
I think, you know, we don't have like a the city is still working on updating some of the data at the same time that we're doing this. So I can't give you a number like we need this many new units of housing, but there is definitely already a demand for housing. There's an issue of affordability in housing. And we heard in the survey that there are a significant amount of people who work in Bath who would like to live in Bath, but have not been able to because housing is not available or affordable. So I think that in Bath, we're looking at that as sort of two different ways to create housing. One is through rehabilitating vacant properties, underused properties, and then of course the other would be through new development.
Yes, one more question?
Yeah, isn't this part of the blue part of Bath there already heavily housed, and the density of that is sometimes been spoken to as being comparable to Monroy Hill, actually, some of the densest populated area in the state. So when, you know, I know when people have tried to figure out where there could be some expansion, it's difficult to find that in that little area.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And there's probably no single way that you could point to as the way to fix a housing crisis or to add more jobs to an area. But I think that when we think about these things all together, there is a lot of diversity in land uses in this blue area. Yes, there's a lot of density and there are a lot of homes. Most of the city's homes are in that area today. And what we were hearing in the survey is that in the future, we need more housing, and most of it should be around the area where it is today. So that might be, as Kate said, thinking about how buildings are utilized and how to add a few units here and there, and it might be larger projects that are happening on vacant or underutilized land. So those are the kinds of things we want to hear more about tonight. And if you go to the next slide, the idea here is that we want to focus on some pretty specific questions for each of these areas around the room. If you take a moment to look around, we have 4 stations, four different locations around this room. We want to talk about the rural area in the city. We want to talk about the Route 1 corridor at the back. We want to talk about downtown, and we do want to talk specifically about the waterfront as well. And for each of these areas, there will be thoughts on how to tackle some of these things that we've learned a little bit about. But we want to hear more as it relates specifically. We want to take more from the vision and values kinds of ideas to what does this mean for downtown? What does it mean for the Route 1 area? What does it mean for the waterfront and the more rural areas of the city? So with that said, I did mention that we also want to use this as kind of a next step in the process for some of the implementation items that are going to be happening. Some of those are happening now. You might think of like a partner or parallel planning process is happening with a vulnerability study, which is more of a climate and resiliency effort, specifically focused, I think, more on the waterfront. And there is also a zoning update that is in its early stages that's going to be leaning on information from sessions like this to help understand what the zoning needs are going to be going forward. So with that said, these are the 4 areas that I just pointed out around the edges of the room. And there will be people from our group and from the city at each one of these areas to help answer questions or provide additional information. But we want to take maybe 30 minutes or so. and give people enough time. I do hope you will go to each one of these. We're not going to set up, a kind of rotation or anything. We just want you to go to the session, the posters that are going to be most interesting and valuable to you. And if, for example, you want to talk about the rural area and that's really crowded, come on over here to the waterfront area and check back in a few minutes. And we'll just let people regulate that way.
I did want to have just one quick add-on follow-up. And through all of the data compilation and information we get for that informs this plan, I also want to say, as a planner, we don't have a crystal ball to determine what's going to be happening 15 years from now. So in this session too, I want to add in that aspirational. What are some of the aspirational things that you can lend so that we do craft something that informs how we create policy in the future, based upon the desires of the folks who live here. So that's part of what this planning effort is all about as well. Just wanted to throw that out there to put on that innovative thinking cap when you get around to these stations.
Good. So, like I said, we'll take maybe 30 minutes or so and see how people are doing. But in that time, I do hope you'll visit each one of these stations, and then we'll bring it back at the end. Okay? If you have questions, I'll be over here. One question before we break.
When we're up at these stations, are you expecting us to have comments? Is there something that you want us to do while we're there?
Yeah, so each station we've got a couple different things for you to do. You'll see these big posters about different uses and strategies in some of these areas. There are also tiny dots, so if you like the use or strategy, you can put a dot next to it to kind of vote for it. There's also some open-ended questions where we're asking you to write your answers on the charts. And we'll have people at every station so we can answer questions.
So the task is a little different at each station, but the idea is we do want to hear from you and get some responses to some prompts, but also to get some open-ended comments as well.
I forgot to mention this in my welcome, so I apologize. But for folks that aren't here, so it's not necessarily for you folks, but this is going to be having a follow-up online. So if you want to go back to your neighborhood or what have you, you could please let people know that this is going to be ongoing. This is not the only session we're having, so there will be an online component to what you're doing here this evening.
Yep, thank you.
Is there a link back to that information?
Yeah, so if you, we have your email on our email list, or you can sign up here. You will get an email with the information about the online version, and we'll also have it posted to the city's Facebook page.
But there is a project website.
Yes, and there is a project website, which is planbath.me, where this will all also be posted in the next few days.
Great. Yes?
I was just curious, how many survey responses did y'all get to the service statistics?
We got to the initial wide-ranging online survey, we got just under 500, and then we had about 50 people at the first Vision event, and just under 200 total responses on the Vision and Values total.
And that's really good. I think that that's one of the things that I've found notable about working in Bath is that people have been very involved and do want to participate. And even if this room is not filling the balcony, people are finding ways to get engaged and stay involved. So thank you. Okay?
All right.
All right. So we'll go to our sessions. I'll be over here and people will be around as well. Thanks. If there were going to be additions to that area, what would they look like? The right amounts and intensities as we go forward. But
where could we convince people that they could park and then walk?
Tim, right? I got it fully.
Intensity residential, I supported that.
for comments that need to make it to the planning team, please let us know. Otherwise, there will be opportunities that Kate had mentioned to visit the website, to view the recording and the presentation, and take an online version of each of these. So please do talk with your friends and neighbors and coworkers and let them know that that opportunity is available online. So I do want to thank everybody for coming. Make sure that you know that we'll be around for a few more minutes, but you can absolutely, call it an evening. And, with that, just again, thank you. I don't know if anyone from the city has any final words, but I really do appreciate everyone coming.
I just mentioned that the process moving forward, the drafting of the comprehensive plan and pulling all of the data chapters together, this chapter that these folks are working on, we anticipate, I'm not going to give any dates out, but the timeline is moving forward to then go to council for adoption after many months of committee reviews, planning boards, and so that process still needs to happen. The other thing that happens along and in tandem with that is when this is complete, it goes to the state, and they need to find consistency with the State Growth Management Act as well. So there's still work to do, and there's still time for input. It's not done yet. Jen, did you want to?
Yeah, just please, if you haven't signed in, if you could please sign in on the sheets over there, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Now, will we see any cumulative kind of data from what we've done tonight anywhere, or how will we see?
Yep.
Like kind of the.
Yep, we'll be putting together a report that includes a summary of this info as well as the online components that come in. So it'll be a few more weeks probably before we want to post that. But all of that information is up on the Plan Bath website.
Okay.
Do you want to give that website one more time?
Planbath.me.
Yeah, that's the one to pay attention to, actually. So all the reports will be kind of getting online.
So that's a separate website from the city website and Facebook website? There's like a separate website?
Yes.
Planbath.me.
Yes, planbath.me is this project's website.
Shut it and go.
Any last thoughts or questions for the group? Yeah.
Larry had a good idea that if we invaded Bath, West Bath.
That wasn't me.
Thank you, Larry. Yes, thank you for that great idea, Larry. I'll make sure the folks next door.
That was the viral portion of tonight's meeting.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
What about the in-between spaces? So the areas that aren't the waterfront, North Bath?
Right.
What about those?
Yeah, so I had mentioned earlier in the evening that the approach we were taking is to really lean on the 2009 plan, which identified a growth area and a couple rural areas. And I mentioned in the slides that, there are other types of areas, transition areas being one of them, that are kind of the in-between areas, as you said. And there may be, as we continue to talk about this with the team, a transition area or two that comes out in a draft future land use map that updates the 2009 plan. But as a starting point, we wanted to take the 2009 area because that is really, there was very good agreement on growth should be where growth is now. In the surveys and the visioning workshop we had a few weeks ago. So that doesn't mean there won't be other changes or there won't be any growth at all in the rural areas or any changes, but that's certainly where we're starting from. And there could very well be in the
I guess
next
more
round.
what I'm thinking is that big chunk of Bath is a growth area.
Yes. And
But it's not downtown, the Route 1 corridor or the
Right.
waterfront. So those are the areas that I'm wondering about.
I'll just piggyback on what Ben was saying. I think for this purpose of comprehensive planning, kind of getting into the big overview, the zoning effort, we'll get into that micro a little bit.
Okay.
I think the information we gather here gives us enough to contemplate. I mean, we're getting into where are the significant anticipated changes, and I think most people would agree that what we've identified thus far, based on public input, is that. So the minor tweaks, kind of less significant change. Nobody wants major change in any transitional area, so it's kind of that level of attention.
Yeah, and I guess the final thing I'll say too is we're wanting to approach these questions tonight at a high enough level where there would be maybe some crossover or fuzzy edges between what some people think is the waterfront and some people think is downtown, or the downtown or Route 1. So we can have those more general conversations and have those more detailed conversations where implementation happens a little further down the process.
Typically, comprehensive plan, sorry. We should all be gone by now.
You know, I was gonna say, we're having coffee and we'll just
Typically, comprehensive plans get ridiculed and criticized for being a plan to plan.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do, because you take the full ball of wax and then you go, you know what, this is an area we need to really pay more attention to, whatever district that may be. But, so, sorry to deflate everybody.
Well, I think the one last thing I'll say, is
Again.
we wanted to at least take one step closer toward that, so we're not just talking about growth in Bath, we're talking about specific places that, you know, can be a lot more specific, but I think we're at least taking that step, trying to tonight, to get people to think about what does growth mean for this part of town? What does it mean for this part of town? And what is, you know, no growth or less growth mean for other parts of town?
The last.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.